Everybody Loves Somebody. Written by Just Thinking Drabbles. Read by Arashi. This was all Caspar's fault. He had brought up the subject of kissing in the first place, after all. And while Hubert was in the process of casting blame for this unfortunate circumstance, he might as well add Dorothea to the list, since she had encouraged the conversation as well. He sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose as he tried to ignore the expectant stares of his classmates. They were waiting for his answer, an answer to a trivial and ridiculous question that had nothing to do with the homework they were supposed to be going over. "What was your first kiss like, Hubert?" The question ran circles in his mind until he was absolutely dizzy with it. He was too hesitant to speak up, because the truth was that he didn't have an answer for them. Not one he felt like sharing, anyways. Still, when he opened his eyes to look at them again, he couldn't help but feel comfortable around them. With this information, small as it was, he felt it was safe to tell them. And even if it wasn't, and it somehow started to get passed around the monastery, at least it would not have the detrimental effect that his many other secrets would have. "Not that it's anyone's business, but I have never kissed anyone." "Aw, that's okay, Hubert," Caspar said, as he patted him a little too roughly on the back, and then swung his arm around his neck. "A first kiss is special, and you should have it with someone special." Hubert removed his arm almost immediately after he had placed it around him. His eyes caught the amber gaze of Ferdinand, staring at him, and the unreadable expression he held. Doubtless it was that he found this information laughable. After all, Ferdinand was princely and pure, and had probably had his first kiss ages ago. Hubert, on the other hand, well, he was merely a beast to be slain on one's journey to a happily ever after. "I see no reason to have one at all, if I'm honest," he told them, as he stood from his desk and quickly gathered his belongings. "And if we aren't going to continue studying as planned, then I would rather not waste any more of my time here. I'll see you in class." He left the room in a hurry, ignoring the calls of his classmates as he did. What they thought of him didn't matter. They weren't friends, and they certainly wouldn't be once they discovered his and Edelgard's plans. No, it was best to keep them all at a distance, safer too, for his sake as well as theirs. Yet, as he heard the boisterous steps of someone coming up behind him, he realized that most of his classmates did not seem to care too much about their safety. He quickly spun around, a chiding on his lips intended for Caspar, that died immediately when his angry gaze discovered Ferdinand. His body froze, and his mind went blank as he tried to think of some quip about the noble brat, but all he could come up with was how beautiful he thought the sunlight looked against his lovely amber hair and freckled tan cheeks. "I'm sorry if I startled you, but you left your history book behind, so I thought you might want it." "Oh, thank you," he replied, and took the book from him. He somehow felt a little disappointed, but he couldn't fathom why. Ferdinand nodded. "You're welcome." There was a brief pause between them, as he teetered from one foot to the other. And then, I haven't had one either. A first kiss, I mean." Hubert's heart began to beat rapidly, and he felt suddenly breathless. He fiddled nervously with the bindings of his books as he tried to think of a response. Why was Ferdinand telling him this? Surely he would want to tell someone he was closer to, like one of the other Black Eagles, or even Lorenz. It didn't make any sense. "Why are you telling this to me?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. Ferdinand bit his bottom lip so harshly that it drew a bit of blood, and Hubert wondered vaguely what it would be like to kiss it away. But he quickly pushed the thoughts from his mind, as the nobleman began to stutter a response. "Well, You what? Do you want a kiss or something? Don't make me laugh." Why? Why was he saying these things? He didn't want to be, especially not to Ferdinand. If anything, he wanted to be closer to him. The hurt look that crossed his face when hearing his words made Hubert's heart ache. Ferdinand scoffed and crossed his arms. "Certainly not!" "Good," he found himself rambling, with no way to stop. "I'm sure that a kiss from you would be repulsive anyways, considering how inexperienced you are." "I beg your pardon?" He stepped closer and pointed his finger into Hubert's chest. "How can you say such baseless things when you yourself are inexperienced with the matter? Besides, I'll have you know I'm an excellent kisser." Ferdinand's voice cracked near the end of his tantrum, and Hubert had to keep himself from teasing him about it. "Oh, and how are you gathering this information? From the pillow you've been practicing on at night?" He smirked as he crossed his arms and tried to use his height to intimidate the young noble. It never did work like he wanted it to, though. He tisked and flipped his hair in that haughty way that drove Hubert so mad. "As if you would know any better when you spend all your time in solitude like some sort of crypt-dweller. At least I am not naive enough to claim prowess in something I have no experience in." "Ugh, fine!" growled the noble brat, stomping his foot like a petulant child to indicate his frustration. As much as he hated upsetting him, he had to admit that the man was quite cute when he was angry. "Then maybe I'll have to just show you once and for all that Ferdinand von Eyre has no limitations." Hubert had no time to react, as he felt Ferdinand pull him by the collar of his shirt into a bruising yet tender kiss. He gasped in surprise and dropped his books on the ground, his eyes remaining open for a second longer than he meant to. Yet, soon, he found himself leaning into it, and he became greedy. He wanted more kisses, more fingers running hastily through his hair, and pulling just on the right side of forceful. More Ferdinand. Only Ferdinand. The kiss ended as abruptly as it began, and Hubert pulled away quickly, throwing his hand over his mouth to hide the blush forming on his cheeks. The shocked and worried expression now crossing Ferdinand's face broke his heart, but he couldn't find the words to assure him that the kiss was more than fine. Instead, he simply ran off in the other direction, disregarding Ferdinand as he called his name, and the butterflies filling his stomach as he fled.